This is the second part of chapter 2, in which we started listing the evolution of the major programming languages. And here we are with COBOL. COBOL, which stands for Common Business Oriented Language, is a computerized business record language. It's been designed after the Algol 60, and COBOL is still used and it's been used for the last 65 years, even though it has not found to be have a big influence on the design process of other languages. And this is basically because COBOL itself is a business language that supports most of today's needs of the business application. So it is a great deal of growth in the business computer over the past 30 years, and this is business, small business influence. So what I mean here is that the story of COBOL is a success, actually, even though it has a little effect on the design of subsequent languages except of PLI language, but it is recognized to be the most widely used language, especially in business, although it is very difficult to be sure how this language happened to be the major language for the last 65 years. This might be because designers find that there is no need to design new language, since COBOL is actually meeting the requirements of the most concurrent and most recent applications. So it's during the environment of development of COBOL, the UNIVAC system was beginning to use the Flowmatic language, and also United States, USAF, which is United States Air Force Department, was using a language called AMACO, which is they was using it for business at that time. And also IBM Systems was developing a commercial translator, as they call it, COMTRAN. So these three languages, whether Flowmatic designed by UNIVAC, or AMACO designed by USAF, or COMTRAN designed by IBM, they are all in the market when COBOL actually came to existence. But it is super exceeding them in the growth, and especially in the first 30 years of growth of the small business scale applications. So COBOL, based basically on this Flowmatic, which has some features, namely to be like they can use up to 12 characters with for variables with embedded hyphens, and also English names for arithmetic operators can be used, but there is no arithmetic expression, which could be a drawback of this language. Also, there is a complete separation between data and code. So data is stored separately from the code that actually processes the data. Another feature is that the first word in every statement was a verb. For example, define. Define is a verb or an order, or a command, or get, or send, or put, or print. All these words considered to be like a verb in the beginning of the code. If we'd like to go over some historical background for it, the design of COBOL was done first back in 1959, and the main design goals was that they have to design a language that they should be simple in English language and easy to use, and even though if it can be less powerful, but it has to be easy for use, and also it must be designed, installed, and working on the available computers at that time, and must not be biased by current compiler problems. So that means it must be a compilation free language. So these committees members from some manufacturers and from DOD, which is Department of Defense, they met together and they actually started the design of the language together. So the first macro facility in high-level language is considered to be one of the contribution of the COBOL. Also, COBOL has hierarchical data structure, or what is called records, which is records, and from the records came the single datums, and then all are controlled by what we called a file or a table, and then all controlled by what we call a database. And also it used nested selection statements. So this is one of the contributions. The names for these variables can be up to 30 characters with hyphens. Also, this can separate data from code in the COBOL. What is the influence of Department of Defense? I would say simply, COBOL will not succeed without the support of Department of Defense of the United States. In other words, it would have failed without Department of Defense support. And it is still the most widely used business application language, not only for Department of Defense, but also for most small-scale business applications that is used for the last 65 years. After COBOL, we can consider talking about the time-sharing language called BASIC, which is designed at Dartmouth Labs. And the goal for designing this language is to create a language that is easy to learn and use for non-science students. For students who are studying economics or studying, psychology, or studying other fields, not science. So they need to use a language for problem solving techniques that is easy, pleasant, friendly, fast for homework, free and private access, and running on the most concurrent computers at that time. So BASIC fulfills all these requirements. The current popular dialect of the BASIC is called Visual Basic, which is also used nowadays. It could be considered to be the first widely used language with time sharing. And time sharing feature is the main feature of BASIC. Then it comes PLI, which is designed by IBM and Share. The IBM and Share, these are two companies, and at that time in 1964, the IBM recognized the importance of creating a language that can run on their machine, IBM 1620 and 7080 computers, which they are using Fortran at that time. And for business computing, IBM machines 1401 or 7080 computers were running the COBOL language with guide user group as well. So the PLI came to be in existence back in 1963 because simply scientific users start to require and need more elaborate input and output statements like COBOL, but COBOL is used basically for business, and business users began to need floating point and arrays, so they need a language that can actually merge between the two needs. So more users are looking for different types of requirements, and this language can support both of them, scientific users and non-scientific users. So they built a new computer to do both kinds of applications and design this new language to do both kinds of application on these computers. And this is why PLI is basically created. PLI design process, it came to existence by a meeting between two groups, SHARE and IBM. They call it 3x3 committee because they have 3 people from IBM and 3 people from SHARE meeting for 5 months to design the language. Basically, initially they designed it as Fortran 4, but by 1965 they changed the name to PLI because it has a lot of features on Fortran 4. In fact, most of the features of this PLI is actually Fortran 4. What is the contribution of PLI? It was the first unit level concurrency and first language to use exception handling technique, and also switch scalable recursion on this language feature. Also the first language to have pointer data type, and also first language to have array cross sections. So it is pioneered by all means in many different aspects, but it has some concerns like that many new features and constructs were poorly designed, and it considered to be too large and too complex, and that's make it a little bit slow in compilation. So this is called weaknesses or disadvantage, or we call it concerns, in fact. There are two dynamic languages called APL and Snowball, and they are characterized by dynamic typing and storage allocation. And the most important feature for them that variables are untyped. Untyped means variable they don't have data type. How do variables acquire a data type? A variable acquires a data type when it is assigned a value. And for example, if you assign a value to be like, for example, let me give you an example here. For example, if you said A equal h, that means you are assigning a value h to the variable a, and this means it is implicitly recognized as a character. So a is a character. But if you said a equal 8, that means automatically this a variable will become an integer. So or value, you write value as a name of a variable, and you said equal 1.67. That means automatically it will recognize that value as floating point type, data type. So simply the data type is given when the value is assigned a value. And also storage is allocated to a variable when it is assigned a value. So A variable will not assigned a storage location unless it is provided a value. After it provide a value, and then at the time of compilation, then it is allocated a storage location in the computer memory. The APL, which is designed as a hardware description language, also designed at IBM labs by somebody. His name is Ken Everson, at around 1960, 1961. So this language, it is called APL, and APL simply is designed to be like or the name itself was described as a programming language, like a programming language, A P L, but they call it APL. Just that name made the language APL. So APL has a large number of powerful operators that are specified with a large number of symbols. And this also created actually a problem for implementers. So APL was actually used through IBM printing terminals, and they have one reason that APL has so many operators that it provides a large number of unit operation on arrays. So for example, the transpose of any matrix, when it is done with a single operator, this will create a large number of operators and provides very high expressive statements, and this will make APL program very difficult to read. So readability was an issue. That's why people think that APL is a language that is best used for what is called throwaway programming language. That is, program can be written quickly, and then you discard them, get rid of them. You don't keep them for future. So it is very highly expressive. It has many operators, and programs are very difficult to read. And also variables are untyped and require that type when assigned. Same like this the dynamic language that we did talk about. Still in use, but in minimum change. So they change it slightly, and they use it, but it is not widely spread. Snowball, Snowball actually pronounced Snowball, like كرة الثلج. It is designed at 1971, actually came to existence. Although they started early 60s, but I think the first version was not released until later. So it is designed by 3 people at Bell Laboratories in New Jersey. So it was designed specifically for text processing, to create some powerful text processing applications like Notepad or WordPad, or these text processing applications. So Snowball actually is still alive and supported language that is used for different text processing tasks in several different application areas. It is recognized to be one of the early application that was written for text processors, but it is one of the features, although it is powerful for string pattern matching, but it is very slower than alternative languages. So that's why still it is used, but it is no longer excessively used for writing editors, and but still used for certain text processing tasks. The beginning of data abstraction, which is we talk about Semiola 67. Although Semiola 67 never achieved widespread use and had little impact on the programmers and computing market at that time, but some of the constructs of this language are so important that is making it historically important to talk about. It is designed for for simulation systems in Norway by two Norwegian guys, Kristin Nygrad and Oli Johan Dahl. This is developed between 1963 and 1962 and 1964 at that time. So it is actually based on Algol 60 and Semiola 1. So some features are taken from both languages. And the primary contribution, they have subprograms, functions, classes, objects, and inheritance. And it is implemented late in 1964 on computers, UNIVAC 1107 computers. As soon as the Semiola 1 implementation was completed, this guys starting adding some new features and modifying some constructs in order to make the language very useful for general purpose applications. So the result made up this Semiola 67. So Semiola 67 is based on Semiola 1 and Algol 60. Algol 68. Algol 68 is also a continuation of Algol's editions. It was the source of several new ideas in the language design. So some of these designs were adopted by other languages. So the development of Algol family did not end when the revised report on Algol 60 appeared in 1962. So later, 6 years or 8 years later, they began to publish these languages, and the result is Algol 68. This was different from its predecessors. So this innovation of Algol 1968 or Algol 68, one of the design criteria was that what is called orthogonality, which is in programming language means that a relatively small set of primitive constructs can be combined in a small number of ways to build the control and data structures of the language. So they made the change such that the features of the language can be improved in the design process to provide such constructs some sort of implementation in that area. Algol 68 evaluation, the contributions It is user data, user defined data structures, and it has reference type, because the Algol 68 include significant number of features that had not been used before. So the number of features that is in the language are much more than the feature that people can actually try and implement. So they are actually some people argue that it was overdone. So they actually they created too much features for people to try and to use. So from these features that Algol 68 repeated a lot of constructs from Algol 60. Although it is very important, but it is just too much to implement. It introduces also dynamic arrays called flex arrays as part of the features that has been added to Algol 68. And we have to say that Algol 68 was targeting scientific application more than any other applications. So although PLI achieved fast greater acceptance than Algol 68, and because of the IBM support, of course, but I would say Algol 68 also has an important implementation or important influence on the market, despite the fact that implementation was a little bit difficult for both Algol 68 and PLI. But because IBM actually is adopting both languages, they find some market or commercial support at that time. Some of the comments about it less usage than Algol 60. Yani, what we say that Algol 60 has been used more than Algol 68. And had a strong influence on some languages, especially Pascal, C, and Ada. So these three languages, Pascal, C, and Ada, they are influenced a lot by this version, Algol 68. Pascal 71, developed by Wirth back in the late 1960s, released in 1971, but it is designed basically for teaching structured programming. It is widely used by universities and colleges at that time, and it is very small, simple, and it doesn't have a lot new in the programming features. But it has large impact on the teaching programming language in colleges and universities. From mid-1970s until the late 1990s, it was the most widely used language for teaching programming. So people studying computer science in computer science department back in 1970s and 1980s, instead of teaching them Java, because Java was not there, instead of teaching them C++, because C++ was not there, instead of teaching them C#, because C# was not there, they teaching them what? They teaching them Pascal. So Pascal is used for teaching programming students, computer science students, teaching them programming languages. And that is basically the most influence of this language. But it was not used widely for commercial reasons. In 1972, a new language called C has been designed by Dennis Ritchie in Bell Labs, AT&T Bell Labs in United States. So it is actually developed based on from PCLP language, and Algol 68. It is very powerful. It has very powerful set of operators, but it is very poorly typed. Yani type checking, data type checking is very poor. But it was basically initially designed to create an operating system called Unix. So usually the story behind C is very interesting, because in 1970, Bell Labs wanted to create a Unix operating system. They wanted to create this operating system as an operating system, powerful operating system that can be used. So they tried many languages at that time. They tried Algol, they tried Pascal, Fortran, but they found all these languages are not really very powerful to create such operating system. So the designers for Unix met for some time, and they said, guys, if we are good enough to create operating system, are we not good enough to create a language that help us create this operating system? So they answered that question by saying, yes, I think we are very powerful to create a language that can help us creating an operating system. So they called it C, and they designed it basically not to be a commercial, commercial and application language. They designed it just to help them create this operating system. But after that, of course, it is widely used in the market and found a lot of spread, a lot of support from students and from business, and it has been used all the 70s and 80s and 90s, and even now some people are using it. But in colleges and universities, people are using it for teaching computer programming, same like Pascal. The prologue, also developed by University of Marseille in France, based on formal logic. It is non-procedural, can be summarized as being an intelligent database system that use an inferring process. To infer process means to actually embed the specific queries. It is comparatively inefficient language, and it can be used in only few application areas, but it's still considered to be one important design in the series of programming languages. So it is a French product. Ada actually cost a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of people. It was huge design effort involving hundreds of people, much money and efforts, 8 years of time. People are trying to create this Ada. They created it Ada, named after Augusta Ada Byron, the British lady who was considered to be the first programmer, first female computer programmer. And Ada evaluation can be summarized as the following. The contribution of Ada can be seen as package, the support of data abstraction, also exception handling, and generic program units, also concurrency, that program can be done through the task models. But there is some drawbacks or limitation or comments, which is it found competitive design also. It has first compilers were very difficult to implement, and sometimes they are very sometimes the first usable compilers came 5 years later after the language has been designed and implemented. So in the first 5 years it finds a lot of difficulty in the market. But Ada has another version, which is Ada 95, which started back in 1988. But Ada 95 is different from the previous one because it finds support for object-oriented programming, so what we call type diversion type derivation or derivation. So to derive a type, derivation or extraction of a type. It has better control mechanism for shared data, and also has new features, concurrency features, to update the information. It has more flexible libraries. Ada has another version, which is 2005. It has found some difficulty in acceptance in the market, because basically Department of Defense has no longer requires its use, but also because of C++, because Ada 2005 features can be over covered by what is C++ can provide. So people dropped it and start using C++ instead. And Smalltalk is an object-oriented programming language developed by Xerox at Park Systems by Alan Kay, and later by Adele Goldberg. These two guys, they have the lion's share of creating such language, Smalltalk. It is a first full implementation of an object-oriented language, and that abstraction, inheritance, polymorphism, and all these kind of object-oriented features used in Java and C++. And Smalltalk also pioneered the graphical user interface design. It is the first language to promote what we call object-oriented programming. Also, we have C++, which is combining both imperative and object-oriented programming. This is developed also at Bell Labs by Stroustrup. Stroustrup is actually a Sweden scientist who designed this language back in 1980. He developed it based on C and Simiola 67. Took some facilities from both languages. So it provides facilities for object-oriented programming, basically from Simiola 67. It is very large and complex language, and because it found support from both procedural and object-oriented programming, it grew rapidly in popularity, and because it is accepted by ANSI. ANSI is American National Standard Information Agency, which recognized standard of C++ back in 1997. Microsoft also has a version called MC++. It has some properties, delegates, interface, and it doesn't have multiple inheritance. Microsoft C++. There are a lot of versions of C++, Borland C++, GCP C++. So different companies provide C++ to work on their systems, so that it is not, machine specific. Swift, which is a replacement of the Objective-C, released 6 years ago. It has two categories, classes and struct, like CSharp. So it is used by Apple for system programs. Also, Delphi, which is another related language. It is a hybrid language like C++, because it began as an object-oriented version of Pascal, also designed based on Pascal and CSharp, this Delphi. And also Java, developed as Sun Microsystem in early 1990s, because they found out that C and C++ were not satisfactory for embedded, electronic devices, and also a language that cannot be widely used. I'm talking about C and C++ cannot widely used for some electronic devices and is not portable. So they designed Java. Java based on C++, but significantly simplified. Does not include this struct or union or enum, pointers, arithmetic, and it has half of the assignment corrections of C++. It supports object-oriented programming and has references, but there is no pointers. Includes support for applets and a form of concurrency. Java still widely used, of course, until now. People use it not only for applications but also for teaching purposes. Java eliminated many unsafe features of C++, and it supports graphical user interface, database access. It is portable, also can run in many virtual machines, virtual machines or physical machines, and also can accept JIT compilers. It is widely used for web programming as well. It increased faster than any previous language, Java. The most recent version is version 8, released back in 2014. Then we come to scripting languages for the web, in which we can list these languages for or call a scripting language: Perl, JavaScript, and PHP. Perl, designed in 1987, it has variables implicitly declared. It has namespace and variable names. Very powerful, but is very dangerous in the usage. It gained widespread for CGI programming on the web because of the login interface pages that can be created using Perl. Also can be used to replace Unix system administration language. JavaScript, also created by Netscape, but later became joint venture for Netscape and some microsystem companies. It is a client-side HTML embedded scripting language used to create dynamic HTML documents. Also, it is interpreted, not compiled. It is related to Java through similar syntax. PHP, which is a hypertext processor, preprocessor designed by Ramos Lerdoff. It is a server-side embedded scripting language, and it is used to also process database access through the web. It is also purely interpreted scripting language. Also, we have two more: Python and Ruby. Python, object-oriented interpreted scripting language, type checked but dynamically typed. It is also used for form processing and support what's called list, tuples, and hashes. Ruby, designed in Japan by Yukihiro Matsumoto, which is based on Perl and Python. In fact, it began as a replacement for both scripting languages. It is purely object-oriented scripting languages. All data are created as objects. And most operators are implemented as methods, which can be defined by user's code. It is also purely interpreted. The flagship .NET language, like CSharp, part of the .NET platform, designed in 2000, based on C++, Java, and Delphi. Also, it includes pointers, delegates, properties, enumeration types, a limited kind of dynamic typing, and anonymous types. It is evolving rapidly and widely used C#. It is very simple to study and implement. You can check online compilers and try some code for C#. And I will try to post in Blackboard some example of C# and a link for compiler, so that you can compile some C# applications and see them, how they are different from C and C++. Markup languages, programming hybrid languages like XSLT and JSP. XSLT, this is extensible markup language called XML. This is a meta markup languages, which is extensible style sheet language transformation to usually used to transport data from one application to another. And it is used for storing and transporting data, but basically not for developing applications. It uses some programming constructs like looping, for example. JSP is called JSP because of Java Server Pages. It is Java Server Pages. This is a collection of techniques support dynamic web documents like JSTL and JSP library. It includes programming constructs in the format of HTML elements, just like HTML elements, where people can actually they have their own custom elements or tags. So this is just a quick coverage, historical coverage of all programming languages developed in the last, I would say, 70 or 80 years. And please review them quickly and try to see some powerful features, some advantage and influence on the market, and some disadvantage and difficulties of use of each language. And this will give you an idea, your general idea of how the computer market has been affected by such evolution of these major programming languages.